Heyo park managers and budding coaster designers. Today we're going to look at building, troubleshooting and refining custom roller coasters in Planet Coaster 2. To begin, open the Coasters tab and select Create Custom on the right-hand side. Now you can choose which coaster type to build. There are many different coasters to choose from, all with different characteristics and features. You can tab through filters that show a key attribute of the available coasters, and when rifling through the coaster types, keep an eye out on the overview box. If you're not entirely sure on which specific coaster to build, but you know you want to break the all-time loop record on your attraction, for example, make sure you pick a coaster that can invert. For the sake of this video, let's build a flawless coaster. First up, you'll need to place your station platform. If you want to change the length and/or which sides of the platform guests enter or exit from, once you've placed it down, simply tab over to the Stations tab and modify your platforms there. By left-clicking on PC or pressing A or cross on console, you can place down the track you've currently got selected. In this case, we're extending our station platform slightly. Building your coaster layout is a breeze in Planet Coaster 2. On PC, simply click and drag the icons on your track piece to change its height, turn, length, and banking. Then simply click to place it down. On console, the left thumbstick controls your height and turn, and then press X or square to toggle over to the track length and banking tools, modified with the left stick and your triggers respectively. To delete track pieces, simply right-click on PC or press Y or triangle on console. Under the Settings tab, you can enable angle snapping, which affects both your track height, turn, and banking, as well as control how your camera behaves, be it moving along with the track itself, left entirely under your control, and more. While you're building your thrilling masterpiece, head over to the Testing tab to see your coaster train tackle the layout whilst you're building. This will give you an early heads up as to whether the train is gonna make it up that giant loop, or whether you might need to head back and adjust things. It'll save you building an entire layout only to find the train barely makes it over the first hill. A rule of thumb is simply to not go higher than where your lift hill crests. If you're building a launched coaster, however, this might require a little more trial and error as to how fast your launch needs to be. This is where the on-the-fly testing is your friend. One of the most important aspects of designing a coaster layout is banking your track. Tilting the track into the turns you're building not only makes for a thrilling experience for your guests, but it also keeps the lateral G-forces down. If these get too high, your fear rating will shoot up rapidly to the extent that guests simply will not ride your coaster. Make sure turns the train will be taking at high speeds are banked. You can do this as you're building, or you can come back to it later by selecting the segments of the track you want to bank and dragging the icon or using your gamepad's triggers as normal. In the Coaster Builder, you also have access to special pre-made elements you can include in your coaster layout. You can include anything from loops and rolls, non-inverting elements, as well as special track pieces such as drop or switch tracks. Though not every coaster has access to every type of element, so play around with different coaster types throughout your park building journey to familiarize yourself with what elements to expect from each coaster. When placing down a vertical loop, for example, you can adjust the turn coming into the element, as well as scaling it to accommodate for how much momentum your coaster train has. As you progress through your layout, eventually you'll have to bring your trains to a much slower pace before unloading guests back in your station. This is where the different track types in the Utilities tab will come into play. The standard track and chain lift track types should be familiar to you by now, but there are also brakes, trim brakes, and drive tyres at your disposal also. Brakes do exactly what you'd expect, slowing your train down to a predetermined speed at a predetermined rate. These values can be adjusted using the right-hand menu as you place them down, or modified when the section of track is selected. Trim brakes are similar but are more versed for being used during your coaster's layout. If a train is hurtling into an inversion way too fast, a straight but sloped section of the track can be switched out to trim brakes just to nudge the train's speed down a touch. Drive tyres are great for getting your train off a brake run and back into a station, or for getting trains from the station to a chain lift or a launch if you're not going straight into the track type straight out of the gate. Block sections we'll get to in a bit. Again, alternate coaster types will have differing track types available. Some might have cosmetic variants for standard tracks, or magnetic brakes instead of friction brakes, fundamentally doing the same thing. There might be vertical lift hills at play, or the ability to switch between steel tracks and water channels. Experiment with the coasters available to see what's on offer. Once you're close to completing your circuit, pointing your final piece of track back towards the station will kick out a connect icon. Select this to easily connect your track back to the station platform. Otherwise, using this icon on the right-hand menu or by selecting it using the radial menu, Alt on PC or by holding Y or triangle on console, you can auto-complete the coaster, with the game itself doing the work for you. Now you can polish your masterpiece using the new and improved smoothing tool available in Planet Coaster 2. Simply select a segment of track, extend your selection by either dragging the handles on PC or holding A or cross on console and moving the icon along the track, and head over to the smoothing tools. Here you can determine the strength of the smoothing, choosing between it focusing on turn, height, banking, or all three together, and whether you want your selection to move backwards or forwards along the track once you've smoothed that selection to make the whole process of smoothing your entire layout much quicker. Now, before you can open your coaster to guests, you'll have to do a testing run. This is where your values for excitement, fear, and nausea are generated. If your excitement is low, your fear or nausea is too high, or the testing results flag G-force limits, head to the heat maps section to show on your layout exactly where things aren't working for your coaster design. Switch to previous run data to see where those improvements need to be made. Heading back into the editor, when selecting sections of track, you're able to adjust banking, turn, and height on the fly within the build limits of the track type. Sometimes simply increasing the banking of a section or adding a trim brake here or there might solve issues, but don't be afraid of having to delete and reprofile entire sections of your coaster to make it rideable. It just comes with the territory of building custom roller coasters. Now we've covered the basics of building a custom roller coaster in Planet Coaster 2, here are a few advanced techniques and tips and tricks to really make your coaster shine. All track segments have the option to remove track supports, so if supports are generating beneath the track in places you don't want them to, you can simply turn them off. Most track types allow for a cosmetic optional catwalk to be added. Usually chain lifts will have these on by default, but if you want your brake runs and other parts of a track to look a little bit more realistic, the catwalk achieves that incredibly easily. If finishing up your coaster layout cleanly is proving to be difficult, simply back out of the construction mode by pressing escape on PC or B or circle on console and heading over to the back of the station. Here you should see an add track icon pop up, which gives you the option to build backwards from the station platform to add your closing brake run, for example. Now you've got a more accommodating endpoint to point your track layout to. If you've mastered banking already, using the banking offset slider will adjust the point of rotation to either above or below the track. You can use this for more precise and interesting approaches to banking transitions in your layout. If you're planning on building a coaster through a mountain or hurtling your guests underground, the Auto Tunnel tool on the Settings tab will allow you to determine how much terrain will clear around your track as you build. Finally, and this is a big one, let's talk about block sections. If you're wanting a more realistic approach to multiple trains on your coaster layout, therefore improving throughput on your attraction without excessively long station platforms, that's where the block section comes into play. These are available as a track type on the Utilities tab. These act as brake runs that also split the layout into sections or zones. This is why on many big coasters you can see that brake run high up in the layout. While one train is occupying a section of track, the next train can't move into that section until the first one clears it. How many block sections you have determines how many trains you can run. A rule of thumb is the number of block sections minus 1 is how many trains you can have on the circuit. The station platform, chain lift hill, mid-run block section, and brake run block section totals 4, so I can have a maximum of 3 trains on this layout, though here I would run 2. To enable block section mode, head to the Operations tab and change the operation mode at the bottom from Standard to Block Sectioned. Accommodating for block sections when first using them can be a bit fiddly, but once you get the hang of it, you will never look back. So that's a quickish rundown on how to build coasters in Planet Coaster 2. There's so much to see and do with coaster building, so get stuck in and see what works and what doesn't. The potential your coaster has in your park is totally up to you. Best of luck, bank those turns, and happy building.